From a massive hairy monster that attacked a couple in their remote home in Arkansas, to a three-legged hairless beast roaming the forests of Enfield, Illinois. These are disturbing, unexplained creatures seen in the woods that terrified experts. The Fouke Monster, aka the Boggy Creek Monster, is probably most famous for the cult 1972 docu-horror movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. But stories about this creature stalking the forests around Fouke, Arkansas actually go back to 1851. But in 1971, this creature that had only been whispered about by locals suddenly made headlines when a disturbing report came from a couple named Bobby and Elizabeth Ford. Elizabeth had been sleeping on the couch and thought a bear was reaching through her window. Well, it turns out it was not a bear, but a large ape-like creature. Her husband and brother-in-law chased it off, firing shots at it, but they couldn't take it down. Later, they found 3-toed footprints near the house and scratches on the porch. A few weeks later, 3 people reported seeing the same creature cross a highway, and other locals and visitors started reporting strange sightings too. Over the years, more tracks were found and people kept spotting the creature. In 1991, someone claimed to see it jump from a bridge. By 1997, there were 40 reported sightings, and in 1998, it was supposedly seen near a creek bed. The Fouke Monster is still a big part of local legend, with sightings continuing from time to time. Stories about a lizard man stalking Lee County, South Carolina date back to 1988. It all kicked off when local sheriffs were called to check out a vehicle that had been damaged outside a house near a swamp. The car had huge tooth marks and scratches all over it. Once the story hit the news, a teenager named Christopher Davis came forward with his own experience. He said that 2 weeks prior, his car had also been messed up, but this time he had actually seen what did it. He described the creature as this massive 7-foot-tall lizard-like thing with 3 fingers on each hand, red eyes, and green, wet, scaly skin. Christopher was driving home from work one night when he got a flat tire. As he was fixing it, he saw the creature coming toward him. Freaked out, he jumped into his car and tried to drive off, but the lizard man was fast and it actually chased him down, running at 40 miles per hour, and even jumped onto the roof of his car, scratching at it. Christopher slammed on the brakes, sending the creature flying off, and then he sped away. Once Christopher's story hit the papers, the whole town just went crazy. People were reporting more sightings, and the local radio station even offered a $1 million reward to anyone who could catch the lizard man. But by the end of that summer, reports started to fade out, and local sheriffs started saying it was probably just a bear, because, of course, bears and scaly, red-eyed lizard monsters look exactly the same, right? The Enfield Monster case started in April of 1973, when a strange creature was reported in Enfield, Illinois. The first sighting happened one night when a man named Henry McDaniel heard scratching at his door. Thinking it was a bear, he grabbed a firearm and flashlight and cautiously made his way to the front door. But when he opened it, he saw something. It just wasn't a bear. He described the creature as being about 4.5 feet tall, with 3 legs, short arms, and big pink glowing eyes. It was grayish and hairless. McDaniel fired at the thing, hitting it, and the creature made a sound like a wildcat before hopping away, covering 50 feet in just 3 jumps. When McDaniel called the police, they found strange footprints near the house, which were dog-like but apparently had 6 toes. McDaniel's screen door had also these large scratches taken out of it. A couple weeks later, McDaniel reported seeing the creature again near railroad tracks. A search party later reported coming across an ape-like creature near an abandoned building. More strange sightings started pouring in, and some started to wonder if the creature was some escaped animal from the zoo, like a kangaroo or an ape. McDaniel, who'd once had a kangaroo as a pet, oddly enough, was sure that this thing hadn't been a kangaroo though. Till this day, no one has ever figured out what was lurking in the woods around Enfield, Illinois. The Michigan Dogman is a creature that's been part of local legend since 1887, when it was first reported in Wexford County, Michigan, described as this 7-foot creature standing on its hind legs, but with the torso of a man and the head of a dog. It's also said to have glowing blue or amber eyes and lets out this terrifying howl that sounds like an eerily distorted human scream. While it wasn't widely known until later, the Dogman is said to have been haunting areas around the Manistee River long before the first reports came out. The first big encounter, though, was in 1887, when two lumberjacks claimed to have spotted a creature with the body of a man and the head of a dog. And over the years, there have been other sightings, including one in 1937 in Paris, Michigan, where a man was attacked by wild dogs, one of which was walking on two legs. There were more reports in the 50s and 60s, and in the early 90s, a man simply known as Ben to the press reported seeing the Dogman multiple times in Ottawa County. One time he saw it standing behind a car in his parents' driveway. Another witness, in 1994, hit a very large animal with his car, thinking it was a bear, but found gray fur left behind in the grill. The Honey Island Swamp Monster, also called the Cajun Sasquatch, is a creature said to live in the Honey Island Swamp in Louisiana. Descriptions of it are pretty similar to Bigfoot, a large, hairy, bipedal creature, about, again, 7 feet tall. I don't know what it is with all these 7 feet tall monsters. This one, though, with gray hair and glowing yellow or red eyes, and a horrible smell. People who've claimed to see it say it looks like an ape-human hybrid, and the creature is even sometimes called the Louisiana Wookiee, or just the Thing. Some people have reported finding unusual footprints, with only 4 toes instead of the usual 5, which is pretty strange for a primate. The first reported sighting happened in 1963. Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller turned wildlife photographer, had taken footage of this strange creature with a Super 8 camera. The footage was only found after his death, in 1980 though, when a reel of film showing the creature was found among his belongings. But even back in 1974, Ford and his friend Billy Mills said they had found strange footprints and the body of a wild boar with its throat slashed in the swamp. Today, people still believe the creature roams the swamp. Some people believe the creature, or creatures, maybe escaped circus chimpanzees from a train crash that happened in the early 20th century, and then the story goes they might have just ran out into the woods and eventually adapted to their new environment. Now, we've covered a lot of big, hairy monsters, so let's change things up for a moment with something very different. I don't know what to make of this one. Is it a ghost, a demonic spirit? Not sure, but the story comes from Reddit user Mr. Witch, who writes, "I was hiking through the remnants of a remote, long-abandoned town in the surrounding area. To get as far into the woods as I was, you had to cross fallen trees over a creek 3 times. I had just crossed the 3rd bridge and was about 5 miles in when something blue caught my eye just ahead of me. There was a man, in his 60s at least, wearing blue satin pajamas, sitting in a tree. The closer I got to him, the louder he laughed. It wasn't a maniacal laugh, but it set off all the alarms in my head nevertheless. He also wasn't wearing any shoes, but looked well-groomed and clean. I gave him a friendly nod as I passed, and he just kept laughing. Then it stopped. I turned, and he was gone. There was no branch cracking, plants rustling, nothing. He was just gone. Still rubs me the wrong way. The area I was in was pretty rough, like very secluded. Not very many people venture as deep as I was that day. No idea what was going on there." In May of 1882, 2 boys, Ed and Joe, were fishing in a creek near Crosswick, Ohio, when they encountered something that would go down in history as one of Ohio's strangest stories, and that is saying a lot for Ohio. Ed and Joe heard rustling in the bush and started to see what they'd later describe as a massive-sized snake. The creature then charged at them, and when it got close to Ed, it suddenly grew arms and legs. 2 arms shot out, and 2 legs appeared from some hidden spot on its body. It grabbed Ed and started dragging him toward a hollow tree. The 2 friends, of course, screamed in terror, and 3 men working in a nearby quarry ran to help. By the time they got there, the creature was trying to crawl into the tree with Ed still in its grip. The men shouted, scaring the creature off, and Ed was rescued. Though he was physically okay and expected to recover soon, he did have strange convulsions and bouts of terror afterward. Now, that very same day, a group of 60 men armed with pitchforks and axes gathered around said tree. When they started chopping, the creature leaped out and ran upright like a person off into the forest. It was described as this 30 to 40 feet long creature, 12 to 14 feet tall, and it sped away and vanished. No one ever saw the creature again, but it became known as the Crosswick Monster. In 1952, the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia became the site of one of the strangest cryptid encounters in history. It all started when a group of youngsters and their teacher were playing baseball when they saw a mysterious light in the sky, which crashed into the nearby woods. Curious, they went to investigate, and they saw something they couldn't make sense of. A 10-foot tall creature with a glowing red face, a spade-shaped head, and a body wrapped in this metallic-looking fabric. It was also hovering in place. It began slowly moving toward the group, who quickly dashed back out of the forest and into town to report the incident. There were multiple investigations, but no concrete evidence was found to explain the encounter. In 1973, deep in the forests of Tennessee, a group of hunters reported an unusual encounter with a creature they could only describe as a Wildman. The group was out hunting when they came across a large, hairy figure standing between the trees, staring at them with glowing eyes. The creature was roughly 7 feet tall, with thick, matted fur covering its body. The hunters described it as having a pungent, musky odor similar to a wet dog. Yum. One of the hunters fired a shot at the creature, but it disappeared into the woods before anyone could get a good look at it. The group found no tracks or evidence of the creature afterward either. This sighting would become part of a larger collection of, quote, wildman sightings in the Appalachian region. And ever since, there have been theories that there could be some reclusive, undiscovered species living deep out in the woods. This last story just chilled me to the bone. I'll call it the Watcher in the Woods. It comes from Reddit user Jamie11134 and goes as follows. I live right next to the woods. I can see them out my window. Well, one night I was sitting on my bed watching TV when a light flashed through my window. I looked around and there was nothing there, so I brushed it off as me being crazy. About 5 minutes later, it happened again, so I looked around again, but there was still nothing. The third time it happened, I was getting ticked off, and I assumed it was one of my stupid neighbor's kids who always mess around. I opened my window to tell them to piss off, but as I looked closer, the only thing I saw was a black purse, one that I had lost about a week before when I went clubbing. Something in my head was screaming to get away from the window, so I shut it and closed the curtains, locked my bedroom door before calling my dad. He came over immediately and grabbed the bag from outside, then locked all the windows and doors before checking the whole house. We looked through the purse, and nothing had been taken, but there was also a small note crumpled in it that said something along the lines of, "Watch your back." My dad called the cops, who also did a full sweep of the house and took the purse back with them. The next morning, they found a flashlight and a backpack, which had a small collection of pictures of me that had been taken over what looked to be the course of a year. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.